Welcome everyone. We are Hands Off DC, and we're gonna get started with our When Home Rule is Under Attack webinar. There's Feel free to join us in the chat, introduce yourself, and I'm gonna be so excited to choose our panelists for tonight. Welcome folks, my name is Nakia. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We're gonna get started in a couple minutes. Thank you, Anne. And I just want to invite everyone else to introduce yourself in the chat. Where are you calling from? And how would life be different if you was the same? How would life be different if you was the same? Welcome, Arlene. Welcome back. Get started in a minute. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat.
Up all night, say what? And what it do? Hey, hold us all.
These are all such good responses. Thank you for sharing. You're just joining, drop your name, where you're calling from, and how life would be different if it was a state.
Hey, grind season, what's the reason? Hey, hey. Worldwide, and what it do? It's sweet thing, they don't hear you.
Thanks for sharing that. That is so true. There's so many possibilities for freedom, for statehood. If you're just joining us, please drop your name, where you're calling from, and how life would be different if you was a state. And we're going to get started in 1 minute. Please drop it now.
Say what? Hey, hold us all. money. Pretty money. Self in the
All right, y'all, we're gonna get started.
up in the morning time.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Makia. People let me call me Kiki, and welcome to When Home Rule is Under Attack, a community discussion with Hands Off DC. Thank you. Like I said, my name is Makia. I am a co-founder for Harriet's Wildest Dreams. We are a Black abolitionist community defense hub serving in the DMV, and I'm a proud leader, core member of the Hands Off DC Coalition. Hands Off DC is a coalition of more than 50 organizations united in solidarity for DC autonomy and home rule. The coalition in its current form came together in March 2023. I can't believe it has only been since March. We have done so much since then. But we are carrying on the fight of generations of activists who came before us. Many of the organizations who are involved now are dedicated to issues of justice and policing. This moment has made it clear that the fight for DC statehood is deeply connected to the issues of justice and policing and safety for all. Just as it's connected to the fights for healthcare, the fights for LGBTQ plus rights, and more. And we really are honored to be working across movements for DC's right to make our own laws. And I'm just so grateful that folks are still dropping in the chat. Please, if you're just joining us, let us know your name, where you're calling from, and how life would be different if DC was a state. I'm gonna do some quick housekeeping. So first, yes, this program will be recorded and it will be made live on our website. And closed captioning is available. You can actually enable that below. The person who's doing our wonderful slides is Alex. So if you need anything, you can always at Alex. She's doing our tech support. So I just wanted to shout you out, Alex. We also have the Q&A feature enabled. So that's the question and answer feature. And we have a chat. And so you're welcome to use the chat and you're welcome to use the Q&A feature. And you can ask questions of our speakers. We're gonna have a list of panelists. And so if you're like, I really want Kelsey to answer this question, make sure to drop that in our Q&A when Kelsey is speaking, and I will uplift it for you. And we have an incredible lineup of folks tonight. So tonight's speakers, we have Carlos Andino of Washington Lawyers Committee. Woo, if I had like the little sound, I would like put the whole like claps and everything. We have Hannah of the DC Abortion Fund. We have Vanessa Batters Thompson of DC Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. We got Kelsey Adams of DC Vote. And last but not least, we have Carl Thomas from ACLU of DC. So just want to give it up for all of our speakers. Thank you for joining us tonight and being a part of this education event. So we have a lot ahead of us, but we're gonna start by going back, right? In order to go forward, you gotta look back. And so we wanna review some of what has happened in the last few weeks and what has led us to this part of the discussion. So to do that, I'm gonna turn it over to the wonderful, to the vivacious and amazing Hands Off DC core leader, Reverend Wendy Hamilton.
Yay! Thank you. I'm gonna step outside because I'm at a meeting and I don't want any other background noise to interrupt what I wanna say to you all tonight. Thank you all so much for being here. We are so fired up and ready to go. I'm Reverend Wendy Hamilton. I am an ANC commissioner in the great Ward 8. And yes, I do see Ward 8 represented in the chat. I am a core team member leader here with Hands Off DC. And like Makia said, it's amazing that it's only been since March, but when you're making good trouble, it doesn't feel like it's work. It's more mission related. And so what I wanted to bring to you all tonight is, what have we been up to? For those of you who are just joining the call, or maybe you've participated in one or two of the actions that we've taken, want to bring you all up to speed, like what got all of this started in the first place. But before I do that, do me a favor. If any of you that are on this call have joined us for any of the rallies or the actions that we've done this spring, could you just let us know in the chat? Give us a thumbs up. If you participated in the original rally down at Union Station, Columbus Circle, maybe you went with us to the congressional offices for a visit, but please give us a thumbs up if you participated in any of the actions that we have done this spring. And if so, we greatly, greatly appreciate you coming out and showing up, because that's what we're going to need. But when you were there and when you were participating, I'm sure that you could feel the tension and understand that this is why we're here. Why it's so frustrating that Congress has been trying to interfere in DC's laws. That's really what got us up and out in the first place. Like, why is Congress bothering and picking on DC? Why are they trying to interfere in our own laws? And it was really personal for me. And the person, what I really didn't like about it is that I know it's not genuine, right? That's what really bothered me, is these are folks, representatives from Georgia and California and North Carolina, different places where they've got their own constituencies to concern themselves with. So why are you worried about us? Why are you taking the opportunity to try to overturn the things that are settled law and that we voted for as constituents and residents of Washington, D.C.? Who made you the overseer of us, right? And the other personal part for me that I bring up often is, most of these folks have never been into the real DC, right? They work for Washington, but they've never been into DC. They rarely even cross Pennsylvania Avenue or Constitution Avenue and come over to Ward 8, come over to Ward 1. I'm loving all the wards that I see represented here tonight, and I guarantee you the majority of those people have never set foot one time in any of those wards. So this is personal for me. Now, you all probably know that in March, Congress overturned DC's updated criminal code. That's what got us started. That was really just the start, though. However, because in the last 6 months, they have also tried to overturn DC's police reform law, which banned chokeholds. They tried to overturn that police reform also had to do with the hiring of officers with a history of misconduct and more. So undoing this law would make us less safe. And so that's why we talk about the fact that this has to do with public safety as well. It would have only enabled more police violence. So we have to think about that. They also tried to overturn how we run our local elections. They were including things like drop box voting and vote by mail, trying to cancel that. And this bill is voter suppression, plain and simple. And for those who might have just checked on Twitter and saw, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene just introduced a bill today to try to overturn voting for non-citizens, that we would need to provide photo ID, and that it would try to invalidate those of non-citizens. It would invalidate the law that just passed by our council. So again, they're just doing these things because they think that they can. And we have to stand up. We have to push back. We have to fight back and tell them, hands off DC. Worry about your own state. Mind your own state. Leave us be. We got this. We can take care of it ourselves. So now that they've started this new round of attacks, many of you have seen the budget riders that they're trying to put, onto congressional bills. Now, conservatives are introducing special amendments to federal appropriations process that would permanently alter DC law. If those riders succeed, let me just give you a few highlights of what that would mean, possibly and potentially. It would mean that workers here could start being fired for using contraception. It would mean companies could legally discriminate against LGBTQ plus couples. We could lose years of the progress that we've made to lower HIV rates. We would have fewer ways to address traffic violence. We would lose DC's Compassionate Death with Dignity Act. We would be prohibited from taxing and regulating cannabis. and we would lose hundreds of millions of dollars in local funding. Now, we'll hear a little bit more about what this would mean in a few minutes, but I just want to let you know that we are committed to not stopping until we stop them. And that's why we have you on this call tonight. We need your help to just continue to push back when they, home rule is under attack. What do? We stand up and we fight back. And we thank you for being willing to join us and fight back with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Makia.
Woo! Thank you, Reverend Wendy. If we were at our usual, outside the Capitol, I know you would be hearing everyone cheer for you. Thank you so much for everything you shared with us. So what is Reverend Wendy, you just made a long list, right? You wrote this long list of people whose rights would be impacted by this new congressional interference. As you said, people use contraception, LGBTQ plus couples, people living with HIV or at risk of HIV, people who could be hit by a car, people use cannabis, people who have a terminal illness or who might one day get a terminal illness, right? It's so important to remember that ability and our physical ability is a temporary state, right? And so this could really impact all of us or impact people that we care about and love. I wanted to ask y'all, who in your life has ever been affected by these issues, right? Or who could be affected by these issues? You could think of a person quietly to yourself, or if you feel comfortable and you feel like we're getting closer, we're a little bit more friendly, I invite you to share the person's name and a little bit about them in the chat. And I'll read a couple of them out loud. I'll give you about 60 seconds to think about it and share with us. Who in your life has been affected by these issues or could be? Thank you. Free Minds will be there every step of the way. Free Minds has been here every step of the way. We love Free Minds as a coalition partner at Hands Off DC. Yes, our friends, our neighbors, our church family, and our partners could be affected by these issues. Feel free to keep dropping things into the chat as we go on. It's so important for us to be grounded, that this isn't just us arguing on Twitter, right? This is not just whose politics are bigger and badder than the other, right? These things that are happening in Congress have real life impacts. And people in DC really live here, even though they don't realize that, even though they don't respect us. We need to be grounded about who we do this for and who we fight for. Awesome. Now, so I'm thinking a lot of our question now is really, are these budget riders even going to pass, right? Is it just like smoke? What is a real assessment of what is possible? And so for that, I'm going to turn it to core Hands Off DC leader Carlos Andino of Washington Lawyers Committee. Carlos, are you there with me?
I'm here, Kiki, and thank you for passing it off. My video says it's disabled by the host, so for now, you're all going to have to... all right, here we go. There I am. Hey, everyone. I was hoping to be home, but you know that DC traffic got the best of me today. But my name is Carlos Andino. I am an attorney with the Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Urban Affairs. And I'm here to talk to you all about exactly what Kiki was just saying. What's realistic? What's going to come up of all of this? And as Reverend Wendy said, a lot is potentially out there. A lot has already happened since March, and a lot more is to come. So I'm going to be real with you all, and that the truth is we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to be brought up in bills. We don't know what's going to get passed. At the end of the day, the House Republicans, they're unpredictable. And unfortunately, so are the Democrats and Biden on what they're going to be able to stop and unwilling to stop. So I want to be realistic and just start off with that the potential is massive here, and that's why we all need to be plugged into what's going on. So with that said, I want to let you all know that right now the House is getting ready, it's gearing up for the budget season. And specifically, the next Thursday is going to be the markup session for the next budget. This means this is going to be a massive session. They're going to be trading, jabs at each other, Democrats and Republicans, about a variety of issues, which will include issues related to DC, issues that Congress has no business being involved in. And included in that are the budget riders. So as you all know, during the budget season, budget riders are an opportunity for Congress to add stuff to the budget that doesn't actually have to do with the money, but can affect DC, and it has affected DC in the past. People might remember the marijuana laws that were passed here in DC, and then through budget riders were nullified by Congress. So we want to keep an eye out for these budget riders and what they may mean. And the reality is that the budget is supposed to be passed by September, which is my birthday, September 30th specifically. So if you're all looking for something to do, we can go out on my birthday and protest. But much like my birthday, they're most likely going to disappoint us, and Congress is not going to be able to pass the budget, which means we're in for the long haul here. More likely than not, we're going to be moving through the through the calendar year till December, debating these budget issues, which means DC is going to be on the fighting forefront for months on end, and we don't know about what, but we want to be ready and prepared to do whatever we need to defend ourselves throughout the year. So we're going to be sharing in the chat a link to the congressional calendar. The congressional calendar isn't fully up to date. It gets updated regularly. As you may all know, we don't know what's coming up soon, other than next week, the budget cycle is going to begin. But keep an eye out, and we will be keeping an eye out and letting you all know when important things come up and when we're going to mobilize. So those are things to keep in mind, in that we don't know what's on the forefront, but these budget riders are going to be huge, and we want to be paying attention. So, we talk about what happens on the federal level, but I want to be realistic and talk about how this affects DC. All right. Now, there's the budget riders, but there's also, as Reverend Rendy was talking about, bills that impact us directly, disapproval resolutions, bills that directly overturn or reverse laws that we pass here in DC. And that's what happened with the police reform, or the criminal code reforms. My apologies. Right now, there are several bills out there that are freestanding, separate from the budget, that they're trying to pass. But more likely than not, what we're being told are these bills are not going to make it through. So we need to be more mindful of what the budget riders hold, because those are a lot easier to sneak through against us. So we'll be keeping an eye out. As always possible, one of these freestanding bills make it through without much fight. But more likely than not, what we're hearing right now on the ground is they're not going to get through, and the attention needs to be on the budget riders. So with that in mind, we need to keep an eye out on every single one of these budget riders that Reverend Wendy outlined, and maybe even more, because we don't know what the final bill is going to look like. And these budget riders will result in significant losses to our rights as DC residents to govern ourselves, which also plays down to the local politics. Beyond Congress being able to overturn what we're doing, how we're legislating ourselves, unfortunately, Congress is creating so much fear that our legislators, our elected officials here in DC are starting to become fearful to do their jobs. All right, there are conversations happening in DC Council right now where DC Council members are unwilling to bring legislation to vote on a bill because they don't want to have to get called up before Congress, because they don't want their legislation that they sponsored to be overturned by Congress. And that is ridiculous and a clear interference with our individual rights as a sovereign territory and district here. So what we need to be keeping an eye out is for how this stuff impacts our local officials. And that means two things. First, this means that we need to support our DC Council. We need to give them cover so they can do their jobs and speak for the people that they've been elected to speak on behalf of. And two, we need to keep telling Congress, keep your hands off DC. Let us do our jobs because we know what's best for us. And because of that, we're going to continue to ask you all to keep coming out, keep supporting these actions, and keep telling Congress to stay out of DC. With all of that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Nakia for any questions people may have and to continue the conversation.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you so much. And thank you for hopping on even in DC traffic. Um, and I'm gonna, if there are any questions for Carlos, feel free to put in our Q&A or drop it in the chat. Um, and I know that I see someone raise their hand. Please just let us know in the chat if you're like, I have a question and I'd like to ask it. We want to make this a space so we can all be in community together. Oh, I see a question coming in. So the question is, what does home rule say? What is, if you could give some like highlights about what home rule is, either yourself or another one of our panelists.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I welcome any of the other panelists to come in and say, but the idea, can you not hear me? Sorry, I can talk louder. I don't know what happened. Anyways, if you can hear me, home rule says, in this past 40 years ago, home rule says that we have the right to govern ourselves here in the district. We were given autonomy to pass legislation. Oh, somebody even put a link in the chat, even better. Hear from the council members themselves, but say we get to govern over ourselves. Now, unfortunately, home rule still tolerates Congress having the ability to pass disapproval resolutions. And certain pieces of legislation that we pass here in the district get priority, get to go by right before the representatives for a vote in Congress on a shortened time scale. These are bills that have to do more generally with certain parts of our DC code, such as the criminal code, which means that this is what legislators are most fearful of passing legislation on here in DC. If it's going to go up by right in front of these officials, which means there's actually going to be a vote on the legislation, people don't want to pass legislation because they don't know how it's going to turn out. So that's an overview of home rule. I'm happy to go into more details or pass it off to another panelist to talk more about.
Thank you. We actually have a question for the group. So there's the link there for folks to learn more a little bit about home rule specifically. But I'm curious for y'all, you've heard what's at stake. What are your ideas when it comes to trying to win this fight, right? What would be possible? What do we want to win? What is that big, impossible idea you would create to ultimately win this fight? And we actually have a place where you can share that, where we can all see it. It's called a Jamboard. So we're going to drop this link in the chat. So want to give space for folks to, let's see, I'm trying to see the best way for us to share it. So you go to bit.ly/hands-off-ideas. And you see Alex just dropped it in our chat. And so we're going to play a little bit of music and give folks a little bit of time to answer that question. Let's see. And Sarah, we'll get back to your question right after this section. Okay, so I'm gonna pass it to the DJ and I'm gonna go open my Jamboard and answer my questions. See y'all in a couple minutes.
We are humbled by creation, giving invitations. A desire to be free keeps us alive. A desire to be free keeps us alive.
For 1,000 generations we survived. In 1,000 generations we will thrive. We will fight for liberation. Beautiful creation. The horizons we will paint across the sky. The horizons we will paint across the sky.
'Cause we are here for the children of the kindred. We resist, 'cause we were born to fly. We will give our intentions to the light. For 1,000 generations we won't die. For 1,000 children of the kindred, we resist. Cause we were born to fly, we will
I'm loving all of these. Please keep dropping your ideas. I'll read some as I see them. Oh, I love that song. So it's 1,000 Generations by Jonathan Likes. All right, y'all. So I'm seeing, all right, let's pause the music for a little bit, down a bit. Thank you, DJ. So I'm seeing mass strike. I'm seeing a rally tour. Getting people across the country to get interested in DC statehood. I'm also seeing connections over here. We got a national movement where people who have never lived in DC support and advocate with their whole chest, okay, for hands off DC, from California to Rhode Island. We need to mobilize people in these other home states. I'm seeing, all right, we need to be doing a massive sit-in on Capitol steps, right? We need greater representation for DC. We need a world where we don't need police or prisons for safety. We talk about pickets and leaflets at all the DC museums, right? Because people be coming here for this free museums, but are you advocating for us, right? I'm seeing a federal tax strike. Y'all are ready, okay? And I love that. I know that there's even more beautiful ideas when we come together, things that we can do, right? So I love this. I want us to save this, Alex, and like have it on our page. It's like, here are all the dreams and schemes. It's probably not the best idea safety wise, but I just want to like print it out for myself, so I can have the ideas for myself. But so do we really need to worry about all of this, right? To help give us a sense of what would change for our lives here in DC if these writers go through, which you've talked about a little bit, I want us to go even deeper. So we're going to hear from two of our Hands Off DC coalition partners, from DC Abortion Fund and DC Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. And to start that discussion, I'm going to turn it to Hannah of DC Abortion Fund.
Thank you, Makia. Good evening, y'all. My name is Hannah, and I work at the DC Abortion Fund. The DC Abortion Fund helps to pay for abortion care for anyone living in or traveling to the DC metro region. And we pay for that without any restrictions or requirements. We have been funding abortion in DC since 1995, and DC has been a destination for abortion seekers since 1971. So actually 2 years before Roe versus Wade went into effect. Abortion is legal in Washington, DC at every stage in pregnancy. In DC, you can also get an abortion at any age without the permission from a parent or guardian. The DC region is home to multiple clinics who perform abortion care, 3 of which perform abortion care later in pregnancy. Just to repeat that one more time, we are home to 3 out of 4 clinics in the entire country that provide pregnancy later on, or that provide abortion later on in pregnancy. And so oftentimes, patients are coming from, we're not just serving DC residents, although we love and support our DC, Maryland, Virginia residents, but we are also oftentimes the destination for people that need an abortion and it's their last shot. Right now, due to the overturn of Dobbs, people are traveling from all over the southern region of the United States to access abortion. So this is more than just a DC issue, this is a nationwide issue. And we know that that is why congressmen, our extremist Congress people, are trying to put through these bill writers, because they know that DC is an abortion hub and they are trying to limit our reproductive justice, our reproductive health access, and take away our reproductive justice. So far, we have spent over $200,000 for 527 DC residents. And like I said, the majority of folks we support live in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. However, we have also supported over 500 people from over 43 states. DC, just as a baseline, DC does not have statehood, as we all know. And due to this, DC Council cannot enshrine abortion rights. They cannot spend any DC money on abortion care, and they cannot pass any shield laws that would help us to further enshrine abortion care. We are essentially beholden to the federal government and to our Congress. The bill writers that have been introduced continue to prevent the DC government from funding abortions. They also stigmatize and attack abortion later in pregnancy, and they threaten longstanding legal protection for abortion, birth control, and other pregnancy, fertility, and bodily autonomy experiences. The bill is over 200 pages long, yet abortion is mentioned 7 times. It maintains the status quo of preventing the use of federal abortion funds for, federal funds for abortion, which means that anyone with Medicaid cannot use their insurance. And currently that has already been putting a huge strain for many, many years on folks, especially low-income folks, trying to obtain an abortion. It also attacks the Reproductive Health Non-Discrimination Act. This is an 8-year-old act that ensures someone cannot be fired for using birth control, for having an abortion, or using IVF to get pregnant, even if their employer does not agree with that decision. It also perpetuates the myth about partial birth abortions. It's very clear they're trying to limit abortion later in pregnancy. They're trying to make it harder for us to get abortions in DC. Last but not least, one of the clauses in this bill pertains to a provider or insurance being able to deny you from providing you birth control because of moral or religious exception. And while they are required to find another provider, this is clearly a tactic used to prevent people from having easy access to birth control. So, point being, if these riders were to go into place, it would be a complete breakdown of our reproductive autonomy and our health. Right now, abortion care is really hanging on by a thread already in the country, as we've seen from the decimate of bills in the South. And this would make it even more difficult for folks, not just for DC residents, but for all Americans to access abortion care. It would limit our ability to get birth control when we need it. It would limit our ability or may hinder our ability to become parents. It limits or hurts our ability to get medical attention in the most urgent of situations. The riders would threaten every aspect of reproductive justice, but it would definitely come down hardest on working Washingtonians and on the LGBTQIA community, especially our Black and Brown Washingtonians, who are 2 to 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy and way more likely to die from pregnancy than they would ever be from abortion. Needless to say, it shouldn't matter where you work, who you love, or what's in your wallet. You should always have access to the reproductive care you need. And these riders would descend our city further into fascism and lead us further away from the ultimate goal, which is resources and reproductive freedom for all. Our wins on abortion access here in Washington, D.C. are fragile and could become short-lived without our proper representation in Congress. DC comes out every time for abortion access, and we will continue to provide abortions for anyone who needs it. And so we need to continue the fight for statehood because it is vital to reproductive justice for all Americans. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hannah. Y'all give it up for Hannah. Show some love. Thank you for grounding us in recognizing, I'm also hearing it of what Arlene is saying in the chat of, it can be really easy to think, to get really comfortable, especially if you've had access to something, but to recognize that the folks who live in the margins, right, that those are the folks who are going to be most impacted by all of these changes. And we got to do it for all of us. Oh, and I see, they loving you in the chat, Hannah. Thank you so much. So I'd love to add Vanessa to this conversation. Vanessa, what do DC's rights look like right now when it comes to, the programs and the work that you do?
Hi, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. My name is Vanessa Batters-Thompson, and I'm the Executive Director at DC Appleseed. I want to say thanks to Hands Off DC for hosting tonight. I'm here tonight to talk about the proposed budget rider banning the use of DC's local dollars to support syringe access programs. And if someone doesn't mind loading my slides, that would be great. Thank you. So next slide, please. So a little bit of quick background on DC Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. We have programs in a variety of areas, but our mission is just to make DC a better place to live or work for everyone here. And since our founding in the late 1990s, DC Appleseed has served as a leading voice for DC democracy and statehood. Since the early 2000s, we've also fought to reduce the impact of HIV on the district. We have a long history of working to support syringe service providers in DC, and you can learn more about our organization at dcappleseed.org. Next slide, please. I want to start with a little level setting because I'm aware not everybody on this call may be familiar with syringe service programs. So syringe service programs, often abbreviated as SSPs, are community-based prevention programs, and they provide a range of health services, including vaccinations, testing for diseases, referrals for treatment for substance use disorders, but most notably, they provide sterile injection equipment, which helps reduce the risk of transmission of infectious diseases. It's important to know that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have studied these programs for more than 30 years, and there's undisputed evidence that these programs are effective at reducing HIV and transmission of other diseases. They've also found that users of SSPs were more likely to stop using drugs than individuals who did not use SSPs. And it's also important to note that they do not correlate with any increase of crime. There are proven benefits for these programs, but opposition against SSPs tends to be on religious or moral grounds, and that has been perpetuated by perceptions that by facilitating safe drug use, we are somehow endorsing or encouraging that use. But it's important to know that the data does not actually support that argument. Next slide, please. DC is uniquely impacted by federal opposition or opposition by other people within the US around syringe access programs. I've got up here a brief history of syringe access programs in DC and congressional intervention in those programs. So as of 1998, Congress banned the use of federal funds for needle exchange programs, and that's a nationwide ban on the use of federal funds to cover syringe service programs. Unlike other jurisdictions, in 1999, Congress used a budget rider to prevent DC from using our local dollars collected from DC residents paying tax, to ban our use on local syringe access programs. Notably, after that ban, DC actually became the highest transmission jurisdiction in the country. At one point in 2003, we actually had HIV cases at 10 times the national average, with over 1 in 50 DC residents testing positive for HIV. During that same period, the district estimated that over 10,000 people living in DC did use intravenous drugs. Fortunately, in 2007, we were able to get the original budget rider lifted. And in 2008, we launched syringe access programs throughout DC. The result of our syringe access programs was a huge drop in the number of new HIV diagnoses attributed to intravenous drug use. Between 2008 to 2021, we went from 158 new HIV cases attributed to intravenous drug use down to just 5 cases. Next slide. So we already know what it looks like when DC bans syringe access programs, or rather when the federal government bans the use of DC local dollars to cover syringe access programs. In fact, there was a very comprehensive study completed in 2015 by GW's Milken Institute School of Public Health. And that study showed that within the first 2 years of implementation, DC's needle exchange program prevented 120 new cases of HIV and actually saved the district $44 million. That's just the first 2 years of DC being permitted to use our own local funds to fund these programs. Over time, the average number of new cases dropped from 16.33 per month down to just 4.45 cases per month in 2011. And as I mentioned before, that number has dropped even more. Last year, we had only 5 new HIV cases in DC attributable to intravenous drugs. Next slide, please. So what does it look like if this rider goes back into place? What does it look like if the Federal Budget Act bans DC from continuing to use local dollars to support syringe access? It's important to know that DC's fight against HIV does continue, and we just can't go back to the period before syringe access programs existing in this city. Currently, these programs are extremely widespread. The CDC has approved over 44 states and DC to offer syringe access programs. If DC can no longer use dollars to support these programs, we anticipate the majority of local providers will close due to budgetary restrictions, and access to clean syringes for DC residents and people in DC who use intravenous drugs would be dramatically rolled back. We believe the rate of HIV infections within DC would go back up. Similarly, we believe there would be impacts for opioid overdoses. DC currently has millions of dollars, which it can spend on from our multi-state opioid settlements on opioid abatement. And it's really important to know that currently DC has the highest drug overdose rate of any jurisdiction in the United States per 100,000 residents. A budget rider prohibiting the use of local dollars to support our syringe access providers could significantly limit our options for harm reduction in DC, and could potentially become a problem not only for reducing and limiting new HIV infections in DC, but also for our fight against opioid overdoses in DC. And so we strongly urge our local government to push back on this, our federal government, our partners in Congress to stand up for DC and help us maintain this incredibly helpful line of programs that does now exist in DC, because we know exactly what will happen if we are no longer permitted to spend our local dollars as DC residents see fit.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you for this presentation. Also coming with the slides, coming with the information. I know myself, I have a better understanding of your organizations and why y'all are in the coalition, and really just even more so what is at stake. So thanks so much. You know, it's obvious that this whole situation is messed up, right? And at the end of the day, it is really together that we're stronger. It's a big deal that you are in our coalition, that Hannah, you're in our coalition. I want to give some space. If anyone has direct questions for Vanessa or Hannah, to feel free to drop it in the chat now. And I'll also ask Alex, if there's anything that I missed, a question that needs to be answered, please let me know. All right, so thank you so much. We are going to, no questions right now. All right, so
Makia, can I just make one more point? And that is that both me and Vanessa work within public health. And that for both of us, this affects both of our issues, right? So a lot of people that we see that are first trimester needing an abortion, you know, a good handful of them are like, you know, there's multiple reasons why they might not want to keep their child, but one big reason is they might be a drug user, and they're like, hey, this isn't good for me, this isn't going to be good for my baby, like I literally cannot do it right now. And so something that we are doing at DC Abortion Fund is also trying to find other ways to make sure that we're supporting access to other health issues. And I'm sure, Vanessa, it's the same over at the syringe programs that you work with, where it's like, we're trying to do a HIV, birth control. We're trying to do it all at one time, right? Because we know that people don't have access to basic healthcare. So basic healthcare needs, reproductive autonomy, and syringe programs are super, super important. And it sucks that DC cannot put dollars into this, or may not be able to put dollars into this, because congressmen want to get in our business.
Yeah, I would add to that DC is currently, due to the opioid litigation proceed funds, which right now total $50 million and likely will ultimately have another $30 million tacked onto that. We are now looking in DC at harm reduction strategies and forming an opioid abatement commission that we've never had before.
Right.
And this rider will be a serious, serious impediment to all of those options. And it's important to note that, as you said, Hannah, people who come in looking for clean needles often leave with a referral to treatment. They leave having been tested for important health conditions that they need to know their status. So this has impacts, not just immediate impacts, but a ripple effect out on a very vulnerable group of people. And we want to make sure that we stand up for the community that need these services, because as the study from GW showed, it's not just about the direct impacts, it also has budgetary ramifications, and DC always struggles with the budget. So this has both immediate and long-term consequences for our whole city.
That's so real. Thank you so much. I'm seeing some questions in the chat. One thing around, do we have a sense of some of our strongest allies on the national level? And it's important to know that, power concedes nothing without demand, y'all. And we have been demanding, right? So what happened at the first action with our first law that was overturned, we've actually grown, we've gotten a lot of support. You have several House members who have gone on the record at the last hearings to defend DC's right to decide our own local laws. The list is so long, I won't be able to read everyone, but that looks like, Representative Cori Bush, Representative Maxwell Frost, our own Representative Eleanor Holmes Norton is our hometown hero. She shows up for us all the time. We've had the Congressional Black Caucus host their own event in support of our organizing. Representative Raskin. And so there are a list of House members who have been supportive, as well as 14 members in the Senate who have sided with Hands Off DC back in March when they voted on the revised criminal code. So you have Markey, Duckworth, Sanders, Warren, about 14 members of the Senate who supported us. And as we grow, as we organize, we get even more folks. And I agree, Hannah, right? They are busy with a lot of issues. And so for them to say that they're going to support us in person, as well as voting with us and coming to these hearings and shouting us out and uplifting us is really important. And it's all because of you all, right? Alex, is there any other questions I should be going to before I get to my next panelist?
Thanks for asking. I want to lift up Mr. Ringler's question, which is really, what is a budget rider? Could we just clarify a little bit what that means? And Vanessa, I saw that you answered it in writing, but I wonder if you could just come on and explain it so that we all really understand it.
Sure, I'm happy to. So a budget rider, we're referring to budget riders, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a budget bill. But essentially, it's a piece of policy, a policy directive that is just tacked on to another piece of legislation. In this case, we're talking about an appropriations bill and policy directives that were just added to a larger bill that deals with government and District of Columbia appropriations. There are other mechanisms. Carlos mentioned earlier the disapproval resolutions. That's a more affirmative mechanism, but budget riders are often popular because a legislator can just add it on to another law or another pending bill without much scrutiny before it gets to the committee level, which is where these budget bills or other pieces of legislation are analyzed.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Allison's question. Trying to keep up. Y'all are active, and I love an active chat. I also see folks dropping information about the upcoming budget hearing. We just got the date today, so stay tuned for other information. Oh, and yes, thank you for that explanation from Wanda. Let's get into our next panel. Thank you so much, Vanessa. Thank you so much, Hannah, for sharing all this information. And thank you for being in the coalition. So we've talked about what's at stake. We talked about, who are the folks that are going to be impacted and what are the unique parts of our health and our safety that could be impacted. And now I want to talk about the real fun part. How are we going to fight back, right? The name of this event is When Home Rule is Under Attack. The question is, what are we going to do, right? We're going to rise up and fight back. And so to talk about that, I want to bring on wonderful Carl from ACLU, DC, and Kelsey from DC Vote. If you're able to join us on camera, feel free. If not, feel free to unmute.
Great. How y'all doing? My name is Carl Thomas. Stand up, fight back. That's not my last name. My last name is Thomas, but stand up, fight back. That's what we're going to do. Again, I'm Carl Thomas from the ACLU DC. I'm the statehood strategist, and I'm super excited about where we are. We have done the best job possible thus far. And we haven't gotten there yet, but we are definitely on our way. And every year, every Congress, we find ourselves a bit closer. This is our time, y'all. I think we have an opportunity to really do something huge, and we just need you guys' help. Kelsey?
Hi, everybody. And what do? We always are standing up and fighting back. I am Miss Kelsey Statehood Adams. I will call Statehood as my middle name at this point. I am DC Vote's program director, DC Vote Equality for DC Statehood, double heading as the executive director of Long Live Go-Go, also both being core organizers of the Hands Off DC Coalition. I am also a proud Ward 1 resident. I see all the Ward 1 residents in the chat. Make sure we're staying connected so we can get all of our team outside in the streets. I know we got Ward 8 heavy on here, but Ward 1, stand up. I love to hear it. I'm a Dunbar High School graduate, first high school for African Americans in not only DC, but the country. So I just want to go ahead and get right into, what we're doing as far as the fight for DC statehood. So at this point, we've built this Hands Off DC coalition, and I want to go ahead and take time to shout us all out. We got DC Vote, ACLU DC, DC Justice Lab, Harriet's Wildest Dreams, Black Swan, DC for Democracy, Don't Mute DC, Long Live Go-Go, Shut Down DC, Sunrise DC, Jews United for Justice, WLC, Free Minds, Metro DC, DC Jobs with Justice, Legal Aid DC, DC Action, League of Women Voters, the Festival Center, DC Abortion Fund, DC Appleseed, DC's Concerned Citizens, Claudia Jones School, Black Lives Matter DC, Neighbors United for DC Statehood, DC Young Dems, and DC Big Dems, the Census Project, GLAA, Bend the Arc, Blue Future, Next Gen, Answer, Black Lives Matters, Louisville, so we're national if you didn't know, Capital Stonewall Democrats, Neighbors for Justice, DC Green Party, The Outrage, Rank the Vote DC, Children's Law Center, Women's Bar Association, Ward 6 Dems, Rethink Justice, Black Criminologists Forum, Rising Organizers, Voters of Tomorrow, the NAACP DC branch, Muslims for Just Futures, Frontline Action Hub, and more. So if your organization was not just mentioned, then you're doing the wrong thing. We're going to go ahead and get you that information so that your organization can be a part of this coalition as we are continually building the fight for DC to become the 51st state and telling Congress that DC deserves full autonomy and self-determination of the residents that reside in this beautiful city. So while I got you doing things, because now you're thinking about if you're part of the coalition or not. So that's literally step one, is to be a part of the coalition. We're going to get you there. All right. But what I do need you to do is drop a star in the chat if you live in DC. And I see in the chat, Free Minds. I definitely shouted out Free Minds, but again, big ups to Free Minds. I know Free Minds was down in the halls of Congress with myself and a lot of others on these calls as we were hackling and heckling and doing all the things the member of Congress. So we need your help. I know you guys are like checking out all the videos and whatnot on socials. So all the organizations I just named, follow literally all of them, okay, on social media, because you're going to get different information through different silos, but we're all together to come together to build this coalition. But right now I'm giving y'all some time in the chat to drop my residents of DC, shouting out that they in the house. And I see my good work mom on here, Ann Hoffman. Hey mom, hope I'm doing a great job and not letting you down. So yes, I want to see more stars. And if you're not living in DC, I need you to get back across that border from Maryland or Virginia, because keep in mind, when it came to disapproval resolutions, who was on our side? We know that the senators out of VA left us hanging. So listen, you need to get them on board or get across the border. You got to pick one. So I'm going to give y'all a second to go ahead and drop your stars. All right. So now we have a DC letter that we need you all to sign. So we're going to drop the link to the letter in the chat. And this letter is going to 535 separate emails. So when I'm looking at this chat that we're on now, it's saying that we have 55 participants. So I'm not that great at math. I'm gonna go ahead and be honest with you. I did not take up any type of math majoring, okay? Political science over here. But what I can do is quantify that if 55 people were to send these letters to the 535 representatives that need to receive them, I'm going to pull my calculator out and I'm gonna see how many letters we're gonna be sending out today, right at 8:05 p.m. They don't know what hit them. But you know what hit them? Hands off DC. That's 29,425 letters. So us right now, if you're part of this coalition, if you're on this call, if you're here to help this fight, I need you guys to click the link and let's get 30,000 letters out right now at 8 at night through the halls of Congress. Because mind you, we house Congress and we have no voice in it. 702 plus, okay, and counting, because people having babies every day, B, okay, every day. We're counting. All these unheard voices are going unnoticed, disenfranchised each and every day. So we need you right now to help us with that fight.
Thanks so much, Kelsey. I'm gonna pass it to Carl.
Thanks so much, Makia. So as Kelsey was saying, the letter writing is super important. Some of you live in DC, as we see.
Oh, Carl, you muted yourself.
Some of you don't live in DC, sorry. So the next step we're gonna ask you to do is, we're gonna ask you, if you don't live in DC, drop any emoji that's not a star in the chat. I need y'all to drop any emoji that's not a star in the chat. I'm gonna give y'all a couple of seconds to do so. You know, as a third generation Washingtonian, I have watched my city struggle through not having voting rights my entire life, not having statehood my entire life. People telling us that we should move to Maryland or move to Virginia, and we're not gonna do that. That's not what we're on. So if you live in Maryland or Virginia, we love you. Just drop that emoji in the chat. I see a couple of y'all in here. Okay. We got a lot of DC people in here too. That's a blessing. I'm really glad to see that our brothers and sisters are really interested in being involved in this fight, but also that we need people from all over the country, and I'm glad to see that as well. So now that we've had an opportunity to drop those emojis in the chat, I think it's time for us to send a letter to our congressional leaders. This is a letter for people outside of DC. So if you send a DC letter, then you're in DC. If you're not in DC, this is the letter that you're gonna send, and it should be in the chat right now.
And you drop in the chat, whereas if you're on a computer, it'll be where the chat box is at the upper right corner as you're typing. If you're on a phone, it should be like maybe reactions.
Well, Jamal, we got your emoji. Like, you know, we got you. So I'm gonna give you guys a few minutes to click the link and then write your letter. You know, I mean, follow through, send a letter. Let's get these numbers up. Let's get our city back. Let's make our city a state. Starting tonight. I see there's some Dunbar love in the chat too. I went to Eastern just in case there are ramblers in the house, which there always are, because ramblers are always in the house. So just wanted to put that in there for y'all in case y'all were wondering. I also went to Jefferson too, in case y'all was wondering.
All right, I'm a proud Hine alumni, but again, big Crimson Tide. I see you, Jamal, in the chat. Big Crimson Tide, Dunbar Nation. Who's the better team by far? DUNBAR. Got it. And I did see somebody mentioned in the group chat about the Congress doing their job, which would be to give us statehood. So, you know, whatever that is. But I do want to note that the Constitution sets only a maximum size no greater than 10 miles square for the federal district to be the seat of government of the United States. So Congress has the authority to redefine the lines of Washington, D.C. so that D.C. can become a state. So don't let
And they've also redefined the lines before when Virginia took back Arlington and Alexandria. So there is nothing that keeps them from making changes.
Gerrymandering, redistricting, it all happens all the time.
The race and socioeconomic status of the people that they are affecting right now. That's the only difference. So I think we've got quite a few people that have completed their letter. Thank you guys so much. We getting these letters out there. So the next steps, right? We want you to share that letter with a friend. We want you to consider sharing that letter with the person that you thought of at the beginning of this call. The person who would be directly impacted by these budget riders. When we were asking you to put in the chat who you had in mind or who you thought of that is directly affected, we want you to consider sending this letter to them. Text it to them, email it to them, send it on Instagram as a DM, whatever you want to do. Put it in the group chat, let everybody go crazy with it, because we really need as many people to support this mission and this movement as possible. And if you don't feel comfortable asking that person to join you and sending it, then share it with somebody who you do feel comfortable with. somebody who you do think is down to stop all of these budget riders in Congress, you know, interfering in DC's rights. I mean, this is something that we have to do right now. I need y'all to drop a rainbow in the chat when you send it to a friend, when you shared the letter with a friend. All of our returning citizens. Amen. Send them all a letter, Jamal. I love the participation that we're getting. This is so amazing.
Carl and Kelsey, this is Alex. We have a couple of raised hands, and I wonder if we could take a few questions while everybody takes a few minutes to share these actions. If you look in the participants list, you'll see the attendees who have their hands raised. And Antoine, I see your hand. I'm gonna invite you to come on mic if you have a question. If you do have a question, you can unmute yourself to ask it. And if not, I'll go to Jamal. I see, Jamal, you also have your hand raised. So I just invited you to come on mic. There you go.
Yes, my question was, the one thing I've noticed is that a lot of individuals like myself, who's a returning citizen, as far as getting the word out, as far as when we having these events and stuff, because like I found out about this like literally like hours ago, you know, and so it was difficult for me to spread the word so the turnout can be greater when I'm finding out. So, you know, so with such a short window gap in when it's actually happening, you know, and when I was informed. So is
You know,
there
Jamal,
any?
It's crazy the amount of crunch, the time crunch that everybody is under on this. Like literally, the government decides, the congressional leaders decide, you know, 48 hours ago, 24 hours ago, 10 minutes ago, that they want to do what they want to do with DC, and we just kind of been rolling with the punches. If you want to be more involved, though, like I think getting the information earlier would require a deeper level of involvement than just a participant. But if you want to be involved, we can definitely help you get more involved and get the information as we get it. Although it won't be much earlier because they don't really respect us, and we have to make them respect who we are and what we bring to the table. We are the seat of government, and we are residents of the United States.
All right, thank you.
If you send a letter, that will get you the updates, though.
Jamal, I have one more question for you, actually. How did you find out about this event? We are always curious how folks find out, because we do want to spread the word. And if there's a way that you found out about it, we'll make sure to include that next time.
It was actually from Tara with Free Minds. I'm a Free Minds member, and I'm part of their advocacy board. You know, so you know I'm really trying to get involved. You know, with doing a lot of advocating for you know, DC and you know, making sure that you know things are moving in the right direction for all parties included. You know, and I think that is of the utmost importance, because I'm at that. You know, as of today, I've been home almost like 10 months. You know, and you know, I'm basically like still struggling with everything. And you know, so the one thing I'm not struggling with is my confidence. You know, and trying to be a part of the right thing. You know, like, and I know for a fact that this is the right thing. This is the way that it needs to be going. But my thing is, what I was saying, Carl, is not just on a personal note, because I'm gonna make the effort to find out on a personal note. But I have so many of my peers that are newly released that don't get the information because they're not putting the effort forward, but they would like to attend. So if you know, me getting like this technology, I'm just getting used to. So like if I can get the word, I can definitely start shooting it to individuals because we have support groups that we have Zoom meetings, that need to be, we can get the word out on the Zoom meetings. We have on Wednesday night, we have over 100 people, and telling those 100 people and say, let me tell a friend, now we got people showing up in droves and they like, whoa, this thing is getting some traction. And it's I have read something like it's almost like we getting over like 1,000 or almost 2,000 migrants each year come moving to District of Columbia or something like that, like in like the last 3-4 years. So with numbers like that, I don't want us to unconsciously be silenced on pushing what should be done for lifetime Washingtonians, and I'm not, not for the individuals who are moving here too, is like I have a problem with anybody moving here because I think this the gentrification to an extent was great for DC. When I come home and I seen people walking the streets 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning with their dogs holding hands, when I was out here, you couldn't walk the street 9:30 at night. You better have some pep in your step.
I definitely think there's some blessings involved in it, but we want to be able to all be healthy and happy here in the District of Columbia. And actually, Jamal, if you want, because I know you had some other issues, concerns, and questions that you put in the chat earlier. If you want, you can direct message me your number, and we could talk about those things too.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
I do think that we have to do more to help everybody, and that's including our residents who return from incarceration, certainly. So, I mean, that all of that actually is a part of having budget autonomy and being a state.
Exactly.
Our ability to make our own decisions and to buy our own groceries, right? Like that's what we want to do. If you want to tell us what to cook, at least let's buy the groceries, and with the money that we earned ourselves, that we self-generated. And so, with that said, I think it's time.
And also, Jamal, just make sure that everybody's following all the social medias, because again, that's going to be our quickest method of getting our information out. Is going to be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and sometimes TikTok. At least Alex has a good TikTok. I won't say DC Bo has the best TikTok, but I'm trying to work on it. But social media is going to be our most direct form of contact as far as getting it at speedy purpose too. And I know it was like 2 more people in the chat. Alex, I don't know if you wanted to kick it to Eleanor, one of our good coalition partners with League of Women Voters.
Yeah, sure. I think we've got time for just one more question. So Eleanor, I will give you the option to unmute yourself and you can ask your question. I see you came off mute. Do you have a question, Eleanor? Are you there? We cannot hear you if you are. And because we're getting close to the end of our time, Eleanor, why don't you type your question in the chat if you have it, and we can read it if you're not able to ask it by audio. Oh, okay. Eleanor does not have a question. Great. Okay, thanks.
Got it.
All right.
Thanks. Wanda, just checking out your question. How can social media be used to get more folks engaged? Social media in this present state of society is going to be, again, the best method of contact. Especially when you think about like movements, you think of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, you got to think about them in their more youthful age. So the more youthful generation is going to be using social media as their primary form of information for one. And so mind you, it's an information platform, so it can be anything on there. So it's us taking the due diligence to make sure that we're putting out accurate information and good timing information for people to come out and support our actions. But always don't mind it. Pick up the phone. If you can call somebody, send them a text, direct communication is going to be the best method of communication. Social media, fastest, picking up the phone, best. So, whatever one floats your boat, that's what we're going to be asking you to do. And keeping in mind about next actions, we do want to keep in mind that these conservatives, they announce new bills and new hearings about DC literally every day with just a few days notice. That means we often, again, mobilize very fast. Many of our actions, including the first one, were all planned in less than a week. And we know it's not always easy for people to get off of work in the middle of the day, which, quite frankly, is when they make the hearings and bills come out so that we can't be there. They're literally disenfranchising us and silencing us. So what kind of support do my fellow non-coalition members need to make sure that they're able to join in future actions? Like, what can we do? So say it's an action that we have to do at 10 in the morning on a Thursday, because that's just what time that Andrew Clyde decides to get on my nerves. How can we make it so that you can come with me to chase him down the hallway? Like, I actually don't want to keep going by myself. And I do know that you may be at work at that time, but we want to really think through how to engage more people. Like, if you feel like while we're there, we can't necessarily go live, but if we had some graphic that everybody was circling around at the same time, maybe that's what you would be inclined to do. Or if it was an opportunity to call someone's office, like while we're in the hearing, even though they'll be in the hearing too, so they wouldn't necessarily get the call, but it could jam up some phones. Or just, what do you guys think, or what are you guys willing more so to actually do to help us in the fight? And I'll give you a few minutes, literally like one, not even a whole one, to answer that in the chat. I see social media is very helpful, but whatever else we can think of.
Yeah, I'm seeing in the chat. I can make calls from work, but it's so hard to take the day off on short notice. Giving and selling gear to spread conversation starters all over. That was something we talked about our last action around, our popular t-shirts. I'm like, I messed up, I don't have my t-shirt on, but the Hands Off DC shirt, so many people may want to sell those, get those for their friends and their families, getting people to ask them, well, what is Hands Off DC? So I love that idea. Wanda says, I'm a caregiver of seniors, but if I can call her right, I'm willing. And it means a lot to us.
All right, well, while you guys are still dropping those answers in the chat, I do have one more question for you guys to answer. See, this is very interactive. We really want to figure out how to get you guys out in the streets with us. I know I saw a tweet one time, why is it the same 14 people? And that's the same thing I was asking. It's 700,000 plus disenfranchised residents. We should all be out in the street. So we're really adamantly asking, what can we do to get you guys out the house? If you're a teacher, how can we get your school extra credit to come out and support? Because that'll give more money for your schools. If you have some type of business, how can we support you there? When the CARES Act happened, your business didn't get any money. You should be infuriated. So we have to be very intentional about, getting people out in the streets, especially people that are directly disenfranchised. Mind you, it's a national issue because 2 senators helps everything. Climate change, reproductive rights, you name it, 2 senators is the answer. I haven't found a topic where 2 senators wasn't the answer. So if you got one, let me know. But I'm gonna keep that as one of my main talking points. So I'm looking for 2 people at this point. I need 2 people. Put a 1 if you're this person, which is an amplifier. If you're willing to repost on socials, if you're willing to call your friend, if you're willing to, like Sydney said, write a letter, if you're willing to do anything but not show up, write a 1. Then I need you to write a 2 if you're going to be the more radical change. Now, you don't have to be this person, but if you're willing to get down with some civil disobedience, and civil disobedience means you could possibly get arrested, okay? We're going to commit a crime to bring awareness to this issue. So I need my 1s. If you want to amplify, I need my 2s. If you're willing to, go down for the team, but you could be a 1 and a 2, because you can tweet and then you can put it on your Instagram and then you can get arrested. Because I've done it all in one day before. So I know it can be done. As a person who's done it before, it can be done.
I see a lot of 2s in the chat. That's a beautiful thing. If you're on probation, don't put a 2. That's definitely not the move. I'm going to give you guys some homework, okay? I'm going to give you some homework. This bonus work, all right? We got one more way that you can take action. Okay? But we're only going to share it in the follow-up email from tonight's meeting. So when you get the email, the one from tonight's meeting, following up with you, you open the email and there'll be a link in it. You click on the link and everything will be clear to you. You'll get an example of what to do, how to do it, and you'll be able to do it. All right, I need you to make a soapbox video. That is, you're going to be talking about this issue in the same manner that I'm talking about it right now, so that people really understand that you are serious about what's happening. Because we're serious about what's happening. We need voting rights, and we need y'all to get involved right now.
And Julia, flip that 1.5 around, because we need to be the 51st state. So we need 51 people. Ain't no 1.5. It's 51 times 51 times 51 until we got 700,000 people in the streets, including babies, making us the 51st state of the United States, because our voices will be heard. DC, statehood, and we mean it now. When I say hands off, I say DC. Hands off.
DC.
Hands off.
DC.
DC.
I'm about to go marching right now. Y'all done got me fired up at 8:30.
Let's
Thank
go.
you so much. Y'all, please give some love to Kelsey and Carl in the chat for showing us how we fight. Thank you for being so interactive. We have so much good information that we're going to use for all of our future actions. Y'all, thank you, Carl, Kelsey. Thank you for being in the coalition. Thank you for being on the call. And with that, everyone, y'all, we have been all around. We have gone deeper into understanding what happened, what brought us here, what's at stake, what is the unique impact of public health. We talked about how we gonna get free, how we gonna fight. Y'all done already took action. Some of y'all done sent 500 letters tonight alone, right? And we are gonna send thousands and thousands of letters. We also gonna show up in person. And I'm just grateful to be here and grateful to be a core leader in this coalition. You, just like Carl said, there's going to be a follow-up email after this call with all the resources and links that we shared tonight. And so it's your job, right? It's now your job to make sure to check that email and record your video, take action so that you can know about our next big moment. And we hope to see you at the next event for a chance to say together, hands off DC. And if we didn't get any of your questions, feel free to reply to your email. Thank you so much. I see folks connecting in the chat. We're going to play some music because, you know, I love to vibe it out. Thank y'all for joining us tonight.
I need some healing in my life. Someone who cares like Brandy cares.